create a network because it takes a village. I don't care if it's raising your family, your career, your friendships. It takes a village. You're not successful individually. You're successful together, and you need to tap into that. And I think sometimes as humans, it's hard for us to ask for help. You think you have to solve it all yourself, and it's not. You just have to know who to call, and you got to make sure that you have people in your network that pick up the phone when you call and say, I've got a problem, I need help. You know.
Absolutely right. And there's a whole lot of leaders that are real tied up in the whole Kool-Aid thing, and they need to be at the top of the pile. And it's really important that you surround yourself, hire people that are smarter than you are.
Welcome to Symplicity Conversations, where we explore the intersection of business, leadership, technology, and community. Today, I'm joined by Ted Loomis, an artist with a unique background. 17 years in the aerospace industry, in IT at Boeing, now channeling his passions for both technology and creativity into thought-provoking works of art. Together, we'll uncover how his career shaped his art, the ways technology and creativity merge in unexpected places. But first, let's talk about the Symplicity Insight. This is our quote of the day, and today's comes to us from Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. I love that. Isn't that cool?
It's beautiful.
That's really cool. So be sure to subscribe to Symplicity Conversations to hear from more leaders, innovators, and creators who are shaping the future at thesimplepodcast.com. So Ted, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Ohayou gozaimashita, as they say in Japan.
Yes. I need to pull out, I studied Japanese.
Did you?
Watashi wa kasarin-san.
Oh, boy. You just lost me.
I know. It's like when it comes out of there, it's like, wow. But it's been decades. But I still have these little bits that I can pull out. But yeah, no, how exciting for you to be here. And we are so thrilled to have your art come into Symplicity. And, I talk about Symplicity as my own little Downton Abbey, right? I love that show anyways, but when I found this space, the landlord that I worked with brought me in and said, here's a space. And I looked at him and I said, are you joking? Like, this was perfect. This, like, all negotiations were out the window because I was totally hard on my sleeve going, I want this. But to have your work come in, I can't wait to see it today, but to have your work come in and be in this iconic space and there's so much meaning behind it, and I can't wait to dive into that. But wow, it's going to be incredible.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I've got to say, when I was introduced to Symplicity Communications, I did some research, and the way I researched them was to watch 2 of these podcasts with you and Doug. Aww. And one of them that really stands out in my mind, besides, and we talked a little bit about this a minute ago, I was really impressed, and your ethics and your honor and your integrity really resonated with me, and that is so important. But you made a statement, one of them, and you were referring to some of the goals you'd have achieved. And you said big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And that's kind of, for me, what ArtPrize has been, is a big, hairy, audacious goal to get something big enough and good enough in here. And I'm so honored to be with Symplicity.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that for sure. So let's talk about the early spark. How did your interest in both art and technology? I mean, you were in the technology world at Boeing. So how did the art and technology begin? Was there kind of a formative moment that shaped those passions?
Well, I think, it goes back to high school, and way before computers were doing anything but crunching away back in Massachusetts somewhere. Yeah. I was a camera geek, right? I worked for the local county newspaper and was their photographer and darkroom technician. Wow. And so kind of kind of got involved doing with all that stuff. And then later went to, after Vietnam, I went to Michigan State and studied graphic design, did my master's in graphic design there. And it was at a point where we had a gentleman, Bill Kowalczyk, who got one of the first Apple computers to do design with. And I was so busy. I was working full-time and going to grad school full-time that I didn't spend the time doing that then. So I had to play catch up afterwards with an old Mac Plus and learned how to do design work on that. And so that kind of started it. It got the Luddite out of me and got me working on with that new technology.
You know, I don't know if you know this, but just 2 days ago, we watched the Tech Week opener with Steve Wozniak. So we heard about the early days of him creating the Apple computer, and it was just fascinating. So it's so interesting that you kind of say that together, and it's I don't know. I just think what formidable times we have and how it starts us on our path, right? But, you know, you mentioned about Vietnam, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Very welcome.
My little brother was in the Navy. He passed away about 20, it'll be 25 years. He was on a motorcycle. But we had a military funeral for him, and I have a special place in my heart for people who have served, because it takes a lot to raise your right hand and go through that. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Let's talk about Boeing a little bit, because, you know, we sell technology. My business this is the 19th year. In January, I'm going to be starting my 20th year, and we go into and work with a lot of IT people to help craft and design solutions, from circuits to phone systems to cybersecurity.
Sure.
So you spent 17 years in IT at Boeing. That has to be how fascinating. Like, what was your day-to-day and how did you get to that role?
I had a lot of different days to days, because I started out there as a contractor. I was working for a company that was the worst experience I've ever had in my life.
Don't you
as
have
an
to have
employee.
some of those,
Well, yeah,
though?
you do. As an employee, and I gambled and went to Boeing as a contractor, gambling that I could turn it into something, and went into the help desk. And was answering phone calls from the engineers that would say, you know, this XYZ system doesn't work, and I'd have to try to figure it out. And I wasn't really smart enough to figure all that out. I did my best, but I'm a generalist and a people person, and soon got out of that role and became the lead in what was called problem management. And we did communications about all the major computing events that were occurring all over the enterprise worldwide, and were involved with trying to resolve them, obviously, coordinating the resolution of them. Did that for a few years, and then the manager I had for that went to work in what's called service delivery management, which is account management, basically.
Right.
And he asked me if I wanted to come over and do that, and I said, sure. And so I spent pretty much the rest of my career with a couple little forays into different areas as a service delivery manager. Was responsible for IT infrastructure's relationship with at different times with human resources, with finance, new airplane programs, and eventually with IT International. And kind of in the middle of that. So in the middle of that, I did a couple of forays and really became a lean expert.
Right.
But my role was basically to bring the right smart people together. And I learned really early on that there's a whole lot of people that want to be the smartest person in the room, and it's a lot easier to be the dumbest person in the room, because I was able to begin conversations by saying, I'm going to stumble into this, and you guys help me.
Yeah.
And that really broke the ice.
You know, it's so interesting. I call it my time in the trenches, and I think that as listeners think about it, you gotta understand where you are. Are you in the role that you don't care for, but know that it's going to build character and you're learning something that will help contribute to your future. And so I think that as you looked at your career, being open to those opportunities, and recognizing that, I need to play a role here. There's smart people in the room, and you always want, like, I hire people smarter than me all the time. That's what I should be doing, because I shouldn't be doing all these different roles, but you need to know where you are in there. And then on the whole, as you look back to where you are now, going back to those 17 years, you can kind of piece out those different avenues that helped you be successful today, because you kind of understood and learned, I think.
It was a wonderful learning experience. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I never could have imagined being a kid from St. John's, Michigan, being able to, retire as a senior versatile technologist. And as one of the guys I worked for said one time, we're a mile wide and an inch deep. And we know a little bit about a lot of stuff. Yeah. But the most important thing is the people to call.
Well, that's it. It's the resources. It's the connection. And I've been talking to some younger people recently, and they're like, what should I do to make myself more successful? I'm like, create a network, because it takes a village. I don't care if it's raising your family, your career, your friendships. It takes a village. You're not successful individually. You're successful together, and you need to tap into that. And I think sometimes as humans, it's hard for us to ask for help. Like, you think you have to solve it all yourself, and it's not. You just have to know who to call, and you got to make sure that you have people in your network that pick up the phone when you call and say, "I've got a problem. I need help." You know,
absolutely right. And you're. I have to say you're unusual that way, because there's a whole lot of leaders that are real tied up in the whole Kool-Aid thing, and they need to be at the top of the pile. And it's really important that you surround yourself, hire people that are smarter than you are.
Yeah. And my staff, and they tease me a lot, because I always say I do what they tell me to do. I mean, they know at the end of the day, I got to lead the ship. I got to make decisions. But I'm smart enough to know that if Brittany tells me to do something, I better get it done.
Sure.
Because, she needs it, and they need to see that support. And I think that's what makes a good leader, is somebody that can understand that our job is to remove roadblocks. It's not to be the one that thinks of everything. Because if you put yourself in that position, oh my God, you're limiting not only yourself, but your team. You need them to flourish, even if it means making a mistake. Right? Even if it means watching them like drop the ball, make a mistake, because they're going to learn more from that, and they're probably not going to repeat that, and they're going to figure out problem solving. I love that you say your career is kind of problem solving, in terms of you had to, became a technologist by problem solving, because I don't think people give enough credit to that skill. I think, as I'm watching staff, they'll take a no and say, okay, I got a no, I couldn't solve it. No is just a not yet for me. Like, you didn't ask the right person. If you got a no, just keep going.
We could probably spend the entire episode talking about the diminishment of the skill of critical thinking in our society.
Yeah, for sure.
We're really losing that.
For sure. So I would say to those listening is really reflect. I think a lot of things you have to self-reflect and say, where am I on this? When you get an idea, when somebody sparks the thought of curiosity, and it's like, can I self-reflect on that? That's a huge strength. People always, when they're interviewing, they ask, what's your strength and weaknesses? If you say your strengths are curiosity and problem solving and self-reflection, that's huge. That just speaks volumes.
Yes.
Because that's just life skills. But yeah, I agree. We could spend a lot of time there. So so what do you think? Spending that time at Boeing and now with your life as an artist? What lessons that you
Continuous
learned at Boeing?
improvement.
Yeah.
So continuous improvement is one of those things where in this exhibit that we're going to hang later today for ArtPrize is a good example of it. It's a 4-year project. And now at the end of 4 years of that, there's a whole lot of changes I'd like to make.
Yeah.
But I had to say, it's done.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how we see this perfect? We need perfect, and I don't know that perfect exists because it's perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at something and we look at this piece, we're going to look at it and go, oh my God, it's gorgeous, right? I know it. But you'll see the flaws. You'll see, oh, I would have done different. I would have changed that. I would have done. Whereas anybody coming in, and I can't wait for the 2.5 weeks to watch people just see this piece and go, wow, it's amazing. So I think it's hard as humans to kind of draw that line and say, this is great. And even with these videos, as we do these podcasts, to have moments of where I stutter or do something, I want those in. No, because this is who I am. I'm not perfect. I'm going to say the wrong word. I'm going to stutter or something. And that's just fine because I want people to see me in my, imperfect self and just kind of showing people that it's okay.
You're real and you're not an AI person
Nope.
that they've put in for this. I think the other thing that I do as a result of my experiences at Boeing is when I look at problems, when it comes to art, let's say I'm trying to figure out how to do something, I do what's called a 7 ways exercise.
Yeah.
And I try to figure out 7 different ways. And that works. It works. That's a very powerful thing to do with a team of people because everybody develops their own 7 ways to do things. And then when you're and it's pretty easy to get the first 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Get to 6 and 7, you're really stretching. And that's where the gold is. And then you combine you get everybody to sit down and combine theirs. And it's a tremendous thing. But anyway, for me as an artist, when I'm trying to figure something out, I try to do, anomaly, a 7 ways exercise.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I might pull that in and do that. Every week we have it's an update meeting. I do it at 3:45 on Fridays. Usually the first 15 minutes are, anything myself or my leadership team needs to convey to the team. We record it, so if somebody's on PTO, they can watch it. But we also go around and everybody does a personal and professional gratitude. It's kind of cool because you'll start seeing people say, I really appreciate Doug this week because he helped me this way. And you just see this really cool thing happen. But it's about that communication of how can you stretch that. I could see that as being a really cool way to say, what do we need to know? What do we need to think about? And doing an exercise like that where people are stopping to say, what topic? And then can you think about it in 7 different ways to try to expand? Because I think we do have some remote people,
right.
And you have to come together. You have to come together consistently. And I find that people, even when they're off on Friday, they look for the recording. In fact, Doug was off last Friday and, all heck goes crazy when Doug's off because we don't do things right, because he's our steady Eddie. So we forgot to record it, and so we were on the call and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're almost done. I'm like, we forgot to record it. And somebody said, well, that's what happens when Doug's not here. But no, I think that, finding different tools to get you through creativity or thinking is really important. And, I don't always think of the ways to solve that. Sometimes it's a staff member that comes up with a neat little trick.
Well, that's part of lean is the first thing is everything begins and ends with the customer.
Yeah.
Everything else is, et cetera. And the other thing is that you want to get people solving problems that are closest to the problem.
Right.
And that's a problem in a lot of bureaucratic cultures where you've got senior managers, directors that really want to control things. And so the people that are closest to the problem, that have the opportunity to identify what the problems are, aren't able to affect those changes. And that's really an important part of what needs to happen.
You know, I think part of what you just said is important, that the leaders need to be the ones to solve the problem. They need to, it was my idea. This is how I'm the hero of this story. And it's like, you know, if you're a leader, make your people front and center. Let them be the hero of the story to solve the problem. Don't stand in their way, because you will gain so much more by watching them flourish and be successful.
You can leverage all their successes as a leader.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, you know, as the leader, I'm so heads down. I always say shaking hands and kissing babies. That's my job, is to, you know, do what I need to do to remove roadblocks, but also let them shine and let them be creative. Even if I can kind of see that might not work out well, you got to let them do it. You got to let them go. And I feel it. We read a lot of Simon Sinek and Patrick Lencioni at our office. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on yourself, no matter what level you are in a company. Reflect, how do I fit in? How do I fit in? No problem. So let's talk about your art, Ted.
All right. Before we do that, I just have to say that whole 7 ways exercise is part of one of the most powerful things I've ever been through, which is called value stream teams. Yeah. And again, we could spend the whole time talking about that. Yep. I'd love to talk to you about that sometime.
Me too. I would love that. Cool. All right. So about your art, where's your work been featured before? You know, what are some of your favorite pieces?
My work, well, it started out when I was I worked in the legislature when I was in grad school, and I had a permanent exhibit of Michigan landscapes that were in Governor Milliken's office for about 6 years. Those images rotated. I had a one-man show at the Michigan Historical Museum.
You're a Michigander.
I grew up here, and then went to Seattle. And was involved in some smaller galleries there and stuff, just like I am in Phoenix area right now. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. One of the things I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to become an overnight success at the age of 75.
Perfect.
And you can be in a lot of little shows. I was in 4 shows this summer, and basically what that means is you take 7 pieces to 4 shows, and 2 months later you bring 7 pieces home again. So I really needed to break out of that, and that's why I'm here at ArtPrize, to try to make the contacts, and absolutely move it up.
You know, Ted, 75, which you do not look 75, but it's never too late to say, here's my dream. Here's what I want to do. If we're breathing, we can determine what's next. Like, what do we want to do?
Absolutely.
I'm so excited.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to, I think we've all experienced that. Yeah. My parents at the age of 75 were really old. Yeah. And there's a lot of people now that are 75 that are really old. And I think that there's one of my best friends in Arizona, Chuck Sabatino, is turning 90 this year. And he just had his 30th one-man show in Santa Fe. Wow. And he sells 50 or 60 paintings out of those. He's an incredible artist. Oh. It's never too late.
No, and you'll meet my mom. She lives with me. She's 80. And she does not stop. I can't get it, and she's like, no, if I stop, I'll, die, because you got to keep moving. Yeah. But you'll meet her. She'll be at the office. But she has that same drive, just always going. In fact, she's been gone for a month. She flew down to Arizona to visit my aunt. They took the train back up to Chicago. Just, now they're in Wisconsin visiting, and she'll be back. And, I think that your age doesn't matter.
No,
you're
no, it really
as old
doesn't.
as you feel. And I think if you just keep feeding, I feel like the creative side, when you can feed that, and creativity looks very different. Like you could be creative in designing a technology solution like we do. And I think about that a lot. Doug is super creative in our marketing. I have a marketing background, so I kind of have that creativity as well. But I don't think you can define the word creativity to just somebody who creates a piece of art.
No, absolutely not. And people can apply that creativity in a lot of different ways, and it's creating something that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Whether it's code or it's a book or it's a dance.
Yeah. And if you walk around ArtPrize, have you been to ArtPrize before?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, Ted. To have, and I don't know the number of artists this year. I usually round it to 1,500 sprinkled around, right? And it could be anything from live art, singing, music, to paintings, to sculptures. It's so many different things. And I think that as you see the intersections of merging of what art is, it's really about teaching people that art is so many, it can go in so many different directions. But I'm curious if you think, what do you see the most exciting intersections between art and technology that's coming in the next decade?
You front-loaded me with that question, and I got to say, I don't have a clue. I really don't. I mean, it'd be pure conjecture.
Yeah.
I just don't. AI is going to play in it,
isn't it?
For better or worse. But we're dealing with the same thing as when all of a sudden the newspapers went from having illustrators, which they used to do in the 1800s, to having photographs.
Yeah.
And people, lamented that. And so I think that creative spark is there. As an artist, artists interpret things.
Right.
Right. And in doing that, you draw upon a wealth of resources to do that. There's a lot of art out there that is copying. And I'll try not to be judgmental about that. But what I find really exciting is people that are interpreting it. I mean, Joe Cocker's a great example of that. You see a lot of I don't know if you're so young, you may not know who Joe Cocker is. Do you? Okay. But there's a lot of people that do cover songs that try to sound just like the original band. Joe Cocker interpreted that stuff. He made it his own, and that was his success.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I think that we do see that a lot, especially in music, where you'll hear something and go, wait a minute, I've heard that from Elvis, or I've heard that from, another band from the 50s or 60s or 70s. And then you have somebody do it now, and it's like it's familiar, but unique, right? And I think that's the interpretation. It's how they've taken their view of that and made it into something fresh and new. And I think what's cool, and I don't have an example off the top of my head, when you don't recognize it and you don't realize that somebody had already done it because it was so different, and it's like, wow, I thought it was fresh and brand new, but the interpretation was so different.
You asked me what I like in art, and I did a lot of thinking about that a couple of years ago when I was trying to figure out what I was doing, what my voice was, what my style was, and to get at that, I reflected on the wife or the art that my wife and I collect. And she's a fine artist herself, and my muse, and a great glass artist.
Oh, wow.
A pastel painter and an illustrator. And I looked at the art that we've collected over the last, we just had our 25th anniversary.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
Thank you. Just looked at the art that we've collected, and it's art that most of it's got some humor to it. and it's got they talk about with wine, they talk about a wine having legs.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I like art that is not paper thin. There's a lot of art out there that what you see is what you get. Okay,
Right.
here's a cactus flower, and it's going to be the same 20 years from now as it is right now. But I like to collect art that keeps me coming back, and I end up having a relationship with it, and maybe 4 years into it, I'll say, wow, look at that little micro composition down there. I never noticed that before. And I like that. I like the humor. I like it comes down to, and this is something maybe we'll talk about in a little bit about what I'm trying to do with this piece, aesthetic cognitivism, which is a woman named Simone Schnall, who's Dr. Simone Schnall, who's a psychology prof at Cambridge in the UK, has worked on this. And that's aesthetic cognitivism is the ability of art to help people by exposure to creative acts, not necessarily just art, but say dance, say music. People learn and understand about themselves, about the world, about the human condition. And that, to me, is the real power of it, not just pretty pictures.
I agree.
And that's what my project's about.
Very cool. So let's talk about your project.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
Well, it started back at Boeing in 2010. I was working on value stream teams on the 777 airplane program up in Everett, Washington. And at lunch, I'd go get a salad or a cup of soup or something. I'd go to the cafeteria, and we changed out the cafeteria trays from fiberglass to recycled paper board. And so about 3 days into it, and they're 9 by 12.
Okay.
So about 3 days into it, I'm looking at these thinking, they're too good to throw away, and I love these, so I started saving them, much to Megan's chagrin, and I saved over 100 of them. 10 years later, I had this epiphany that the right thing to do with these was to work on this haiku. I've been fooling around with the idea of visual haiku for a while, using the 17 syllables of haiku, and doing a lot of sketching on that and some painting. And I thought, well, these are perfect for that. And so that's kind of where it started. And it started over a 4-year period where I researched haikus. I found 5 of them that visually stimulated me, that I started working on these cafeteria trays with a whole bunch of layers of gesso and acrylic and more gesso and pencil and oil sticks and oil paint and cold wax and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the story of the thing.
Wow. It's going to be so exciting. They're 10 foot tall.
The whole stand is 10 foot tall.
Yeah. And how many of them? They're 5,
There's
6?
17. The first, they go right top to bottom, right to left. So they're 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. And down at the 2 negative spaces on the right and the left below the 5th syllable, I've got I had printed the poems in both Japanese and in English.
Very cool.
So people can read those and hopefully track it a little bit. Right.
I can't wait for people to see it, being in this space 2.5 weeks, that will be there and have, I think the last number that I heard was 800,000 people are expected to kind of walk through the space. And the neat thing about our office is we moved into this office last December. So this is the first ArtPrize that we are an ArtPrize venue.
I'm honored.
Yeah, ArtPrize was thrilled because the bank that was there previously closed during the pandemic. So it's been empty for 5 years. And when I walk into my space, it's like a character, like in fact, if I've been traveling, I come back, I miss you, but I say good morning to the office every morning. I'm kind of one of those, I like to get there early, turn on the lights and just kind of take in, but I'm also the one that likes to shut everything down at night too. So I gotta give one of those up because I shouldn't do both. But it's funny how these things have a personality. Like the office has a personality. Your art has a personality. And as you've spent so much time creating it and massaging it, what does that feel like? Like to kind of be now at a point where, starting tomorrow, people are going to be observing it. And they're just going to be standing back.
It's so exciting. And again, going back to the aesthetic cognitivism, I had, the whole deal about intended consequences and unintended consequences. Yeah. So my intended consequences, what I wanted people to take away from this thing is the power of recycling and reuse. Okay. Number one. Okay. We just generate so much stuff that, I grew up on a farm till I was 5. You save everything on a farm because you may be able to use it, fix it, the combine with it or something like that. So recycling and reuse. And the second thing is cultural appreciation. And one of the things that happened when I was 19, I went to Taiwan for a year and a half in the Air Force. And I quickly learned, it was one of the reasons I ended up studying anthropology. Yeah. I quickly learned that things aren't right or wrong, they're just different. Right? The way people do things isn't right or wrong. They do things differently depending upon the circumstances. So there's an incredible amount of, I hope, cultural appreciation that this will bring on not only that poetry, that form of poetry, but the whole Japanese cultural thing. The unintended consequence, and I think this really segues wonderfully with Symplicity, because you guys are all, ultimately, I think you're about truth. Truth and data. Yes. People need to be able to understand and believe the data, whatever it is. Yes. Whatever.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Code, if it's a spreadsheet, if it's the accounting books. Yep. And one of the things that happened in me creating this project, in fact, it happened this last summer, was I was introduced to a man named Professor Dr. Michael Emmerich from the University of California, UCLA. And he's the professor of Japanese literature there. Michael happened to be in Japan, and I'm having trouble because I'm trying to get the original Japanese shodo, their written language, for these poems. And what I was getting was the poems translated in English, translated back to Japanese by AI, and that wasn't what I wanted. So I'm communicating with Michael, and he's just been an incredible resource for me, and sent me this stuff back. Well, I've got the paintings 95% done, and I find out there's 2 problems with it. One of them is that the big one you'll see in the middle today that's actually on a canvas, which is what I used to lay out the whole project on, was attributed to Hokusai, who did the famous Japanese wave painting and woodblock printing that everybody's familiar with. Okay. And he also did one with a poppy. And the poppy is a fundamentally a very similar composition to the wave. Well, the haiku goes, I write, erase, I rewrite, erase again, and finally a poppy emerges. So I chose Hokusai's art for that. Well, I find out from Michael this summer, it was misattributed. It wasn't Hokusai, it was Hokushi. And at that point, it's like too late. So what I did is we were up at the Denver Art Museum looking at stuff this summer, and I looked at some work, and I thought, this is how I'm going to address that. I'm not going to try to sidestep it. I'm not going to try to ignore it. I'm going to be right up front. So I turned 3 of those panels out of the 17, and basically the first one says, just because it's in print or online may not equal the truth. So it's like, this, I did my best to research this, and I was led down the wrong path. Wow. But here's the truth of it. And then the second one that happened to was a mistranslation of a Shiki haiku that said, the mad on the escarpment while frost columns grow. I just love the visual imagery of that. Yeah. I love the idea of these wacko people, mad people up on top of this escarpment. So that's what I painted. Turns out the translation was wrong. It wasn't mad, it was mud. Oh, no. So I put did the same
Same
thing. I put
thing.
a panel on there that said, "Mud, not mad, alas too." Oh well. So I tried to
exactly.
get at the truth of that,
Right.
which is the unintended consequence of, I think, how important the truth is in this day and age.
But I also think it's your art and you can make it however you want. You can accept that, the input of that data and go, okay,
Now,
well,
I was
here's
wrong.
what it is.
I was wrong.
That's
Let's
right.
let's fix it.
That's
Let's
right.
improve it.
So what advice would you give to aspiring artists then, knowing that?
I think there's a whole bunch of different advice. The first thing is that I would try to get at, if you're the artist, I'd try to get at that by asking you questions, querying you, probing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because who am I to tell you what to do?
Right.
However, having said that, I think I think that people you want to find your voice. They talk about finding your voice when you write, and I think a lot of people find their voice really early. And they stop.
Yeah.
They don't ever push it past that. And I think I think your voice can grow and mature in a lot of ways. In art, I wasn't prepared to have my art stop at photography.
Right.
I'm a very, very good photographer. But I wanted to do some other stuff too. So now I'm in a position when I have an idea, I go back to that 7 ways exercise. I have an idea about these 2 coffee cups here in this book. What are 7 ways I could do that? Well, I could write a short story about it. Could do a sculpture.
Yeah.
And you start, and it's not either or. I mean, you can do all those things.
Wow.
And it's really fun to explore that mentally as a discipline to try to figure out what's the best way right now that I can explore that. So I think that's an important thing. The other thing is that people think they have to be really good to be an artist, and I learned from my own experience. Megan is an incredible illustrator. I never could draw as well as she could, but I finally decided that at the age of 70, I wasn't going to be able to defrag my brain, and I needed to be able to get stuff out of here onto paper. So I started drawing, and my drawing has improved a lot. I'll never be as good as she is, but I've got my own style now.
Yeah,
I mean, I do a lot of drawing. Some of the latest stuff I'm doing is I take aloe flowers. Aloe flower shoots come up. We have aloes in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
And so they send up a flower shoot, and once those flowers break off, you've got incredible pen-like structures. And I dip those in Indie ink, and I've been doing some drawings with those that are really exciting. A couple of them are in gallery. One of them sold. The other 2 are in galleries right now.
Wow.
So just you don't have to be great at it. Just play with it.
Just
have fun,
do.
because it doesn't have to be a vocation. It can be an avocation. And again, whether it's painting or it's playing the piano, or it's writing poetry.
Right.
It's all you're adding value. It's all about adding value.
Oh, I love that. I talk about that all the time in our company. But I think Doug's going to need to name this particular episode, curiosity, because I think curiosity drives us personally, professionally, in all. If you can keep being curious, you won't stop. It won't be enough. Like you said, you stop. If you would have stopped after photography, right? And just, that was my creativity. It's so much more. You can do so much more. And I feel like, if I would tell people one thing, try to find something to be curious about every day. Every day. What was I curious about today? If you ask yourself that question, you're going to train your mind to look throughout the day without even realizing it, to go, curious how that works, right? Or curious why that happened, or curious who that is. Like you especially add in AI in Google and how we find things. Like things are at our fingertips always now.
Oh, absolutely. You asked earlier for me, the biggest thing the technology does is if I want to know what the shape of a cheekbone is and how it varies in 4 or 5 people, I can get that instantaneously.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy?
I can
and have a whole background.
Deer stones. There's wonderful. I'm working on some sculptures now. I've got a maquette, a scale model of one that are deer stones from Mongolia. And I haven't been able to travel to Mongolia, but I can access that imagery, and it's real inspirational.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Ted, oh my gosh, we need about 45 more minutes. But as we wrap up, I'm so thrilled for you to be at Symplicity. Can't wait to throw things out on social. Hope a lot of people come in and check it out and just see this beautiful, beautiful art that's going to be in Symplicity. And I bet you, hearing that you're a photographer, I bet you'll be able to get some amazing pictures of your art with the background of our beautiful Symplicity office, because it's just incredible, and I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to get down there and set it up this afternoon. Yay. It's been just an absolute honor and pleasure meeting you. And again, I love what you do.
Thank you.
What Doug does.
Yes.
And you guys are you're firing on all cylinders.
We're trying. Yes. We're trying.
You're doing it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for listening to Symplicity Conversations. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and visit us at thesimplepodcast.com to connect and learn more about inspiring leaders like Ted. Thank you, and see you next time.